Hello everyone, I'm Sanjang. I'm on the enablement group, but this UX showcase is about the experience that I work on the create stage group for the past 3 milestones. And I'm going to, it's not introducing, but to walk you through how I work on the consolidating action button in the merge request page. So this was the image from pointed out really well. The red box area is the possible action buttons. So as you can see, it's everywhere. Here is the proof button, and also here is like mark as draft button, and also add to do button. There are a couple of other action buttons here around. So I think in the async design review, some of designers already pointed out that it's kind of scattered, and we also received some similar feedback from the prior user research that it's not easy to find some button in certain contexts. So I think the issue you will describe, so I the issue link button in the docs, so you can see the more description there. So this was one of my first tasks as far as I remember. So I was thinking for a while. So, you know, GitLab is just a complicated product, and what could be the happy path? Because that was my first question popped up in my mind, because these are the buttons to repositioning or hide it or do something, but too many. So I just decided to come up with the very first happy path. So let's imagine if you open or create a merge request, then the normal thought process would be, okay, I put some of my code changes here. Could you approve some of my code changes here? And they will do some ping pong round about the code review. And then they want to see it's approved and it goes to merge. So I think that's pretty simple. It sounds simple, of course it's not. So I was thinking like, okay, this is the simplest path ever. So what could be the easiest solution? Just focusing on this case.
Hey, Sanjung, just to let you know, there's a little bit of static and a little breaking up. It's not too bad yet, but just a little bit. Maybe you could, I don't know if you want to turn your video off and see if that helps.
Oh, yeah, I'll try that. Sorry, probably
no, it's
my
okay.
internet
It's
connection is not.
Yeah, it's not terrible. Like, I think we've been able to hear and understand everything, but it's just every now and then.
Yep. I think probably this sounds better.
That seems better.
Yeah, thank you. So I was starting to thinking about like having a sticky header. It's good to have better accessibility. So I think it's easier for you to share the screen. So I just started to explore. That was just top of my mind at the very first time. So I'm going to introduce my persona, which type of designer am I, but you'll see later. But I'm really visual focused person. So I need to visualize my idea first so that I can talk to Pedro, so that I can talk to the user. So I just open the blank Figma file and just using and call it as a playground. And I put everything that was into my mind and also into my head. It's not pixel perfect at all, but I quickly ask feedback with Pedro and also the PM and also with the design managers. And they provided me a really nice feedback so that I could start to work on this concept very well. And I really like to having this exploration board because it's just a simple process, and also it's just easier for me to get feedback really quickly. And even we can also do it asynchronously. So I like this approach. And for the second round, I also very I didn't call it as a user research because it was not a formal user interview. So I started to recruit some of the software developers and the product manager outside of the code review team by asking them in the development channel and also ask them individually in DMs, like, are you up for a coffee chat, and I also have a design question. Can we use like 10 minutes or 15 minutes? So they said, yes, of course. So it seems like people like this idea because of the accessibility for the first reason. I think probably that was the main pain point for them. Like when they are reviewing the code in the change tab, they need to go back to the overview tab and then finding the proof button or the merge button. I think that was the main pain point. So I think probably this direction is right to go. So after that, we opened this async design review question with the code review team. I was so surprised and really excited that we got more than 40 responses from the engineers and also from the PM. And I tried to frame this question because it's really easily getting into the wider discussion if I just put the design and, hey, what do you think? Because so many people can point out different things. So I use this question framework. What do you like about? What do you have like better idea for a certain part? And what could be the feasibility issue that come up in your mind? So I got really valuable feedback. So this would be the final outcome after the step 3, but we still need to keep that in mind. It's not yet finalized design. So I just named this action like things to be considered. So this was the idea that we had, showing the different buttons in the different tabs, because people do different action under the different tab. In the overview tab, they mostly check the widget and also check the discussion in the comments. But while on the change tab, they need to check the div and also the file browser and also the comments in the code line. So I think it would be handy to have a finish review button, so make the code review process more explicitly that, okay, I'm done of the review, I'll just approve it at the same time. So I think it's a good position to put those action button on the right top. And also in the overview tab, I have seen some of the research, it's not the research question, research analysis, and also coming from some open issue from the community member that in case of the smaller review, they would like to use the web ID because like just pulling down the branch and then working on the local branch, that would take some time. So I think that makes sense. So we can also have to open in the web ID or the VS Code so that they can easily check the smaller MR. And at the same time, they can also approve and merge in the overview tab so that they don't need to scroll a lot through the merge check widget and also the widget below the description section. And another new user flow that we haven't validated with the user yet, but with the team, was to provide a chance to select the merge option before they just hit the merging button. Pedro also pointed out that like some user just mistakenly hit the merge button. In that case, what should they do? So I think it's more safer and become more conservative if we have this modal window, and if everything's okay, then they can also hit the merge button and then they will see, okay, everything looks good, what is the merge option, and they can just hit the merge. So this is the good part of having this modal window, but only downside would be it's adding one more option. So probably some user might not like it, but I think still we have more benefit than the downside for this idea. And this was also coming from Pedro and Andre during the design review, and I totally understand their points. So if you just remember that when we're in the changes tab, we already have so many different sticky, it's not the sticky header, but sticky top navigation section, and it already consumed a lot of height. So my idea to going forward to this direction would be reduce the current height of the sticky header because it's pretty heavy. So if we reduce the padding or margin of the current sticky header, it would already help. And if we have more chance to explore this comparing tab. I think there somehow we can incorporate this comparing tab, also unresolved threads, this button groups into the sticky header so that we can save some space, and at the same time we provide more easier way to navigate through those unresolved thread and also comparing the different version of the branch. The last thing was about like, I got this feedback from Marcel, which was very keen, I have to admit. And also a lot of engineers already pointed out that like, what do you see? Like if you click unmergeable state, what are you going to show? Like, are you going to show the modal window, and how can we handle that situation? So as an intermediate step, like the second screenshot was my idea at that time. Probably we can just disable the merge button, and then on hover, we can show like merge check status, that they don't need to go down to check the merge check widget. But it's still also downside that we are hiding disabling the primary action button in the sticky header, which looks not cool. And also it's adding one more step, and it's a bit hidden, even though it's pretty important information. So we need to discuss how can we handle this situation in a better way. So as a next step, of course, this will not going to happen because we have amazing engineering team. So we have discussed, probably this would be the first step to start implementing this design so that we can have some actions button on the right top. It's not introducing as the sticky header, but we will just change the layout and also some of the layout and the status, it's not bar, but status patch, sorry, and the title and the profile picture, something like that. But this should be discussed also within the UX team. So we need to discuss with the UX team before we start to ship this design to make sure we are delivering the consistent user experience. And it was a long and also short journey, I have to say, because it went so fast. I thought that at first time, like 3 milestone, that's not that long, or probably it could be just, I don't know, it went so fast. And I have to admit that I love this power of collaboration. And I'm not so sure you remember this, what kind of designer are you test? I think it was shared by Holly, as far as I remember, in the very earlier this year in the UX Slack channel. And I was the prototyper, like as you see in this slide, the silly look like monkey, that was my type. And in that description, the opposite attract was conductor, and Pedro was the only conductor on our team at the time. So I really expecting and looking forward to work with him, because we are having very different perspective, and I think we could overcome this by collaborating more frequently and also talk to each other. And I personally learned from Pedro a lot. So stay tuned. This is just a preview that we're going to share our experience by writing a blog post or just by recording our conversation, like what we learned and what could we do better. So in the meantime, you can check out our retrospective issue. We put some ideas and comments during this 3 milestone. And thank you for everyone, especially the UX leadership, who gave me this nice opportunity to learn more about the GitLab product area and support. It was really helpful, and I'm so happy that Annabelle is moving on to your code review team. So yeah, thank you everyone. And you mind if I stop sharing, and give me 1 second. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. I have the first question for you, Sungjun. I was curious about how users are mistakenly hitting the merge button. That's new to me. I haven't heard of that happening. So I was wondering if we had any insight on how often that's happening and whether there's any difference in that happening based off of where you've placed the merge button, and whether that could maybe allow us to avoid using a modal or not. So yeah, I guess I'll start there.
So Annabelle is putting the issue link there. I actually didn't have the very specific data. I just got feedback from Pedro that was pretty frequently happening. But if I just recall my experience in my previous job, I had problem finding the merge button. Not mistakenly hit the button, but I couldn't find the merge button at the first time. So I thought that this could be a placement issue, but as you mentioned, this could be just the hierarchy of the page could solve the problem, because sticky header itself is a hot discussion topic. I know that some people hate it and some people love it, but still I did think at the time, like if we just having like one centralized command center, like globally accessible from everywhere, I think it could be more unified way to just find, okay, there's merge action there, or there's a proof button there. So I think it could be easier solution. So I think that's actually a very good point. If we're going to the solution validation, and if user probably doesn't like this approach, then I think we need to rethink about this. Probably it's just a hierarchy of the page problem, or just a modal window could solve the problem. So yeah, that's a very good point.
I was also curious about the ability to revert an MR. So once you merge it, there's a button that says revert it. Like, is that not sufficient for users if they do make a mistake?
I think it depends. So my assumption would be for the first time user, yes, it could be a little bit difficult to find at first time. But if I think there was a nice SUS summary earlier today shared in the UX channel that if they get used to it, they'll find it. But I still do think we need to solve the problem of the learnability issue. So if the first time user had hard time finding the button, then we need to do something for them. So that would be my idea. Does that answer to your question?
Yeah, thank you. Looks like there's some other comments here. I don't know. Annabelle, looks like you've mistakenly merged your merge request. I don't know if you wanted to say anything there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that was so common for me, but I did it many times. And eventually I was like, oh my gosh, we should do something about this. And that was like 5 years ago. I do have a question though, and it was brought up in that issue I linked to. What would the experience be if you used the merge quick action? Would there still be some kind of two-step approach, or would it bypass everything?
That's a very interesting idea. So are you saying that like if we are having /merge as a shortcut to the merge action button?
Yeah, if you just are looking at a merge request and you go to the discussion box or any input and you type in like looks great, you can do /merge and it'll you post that comment and it posts the comment and merges the merge request automatically. I was just wondering if there was any.
I think it has both good side and also the downside, because I think at the same time we want to make confirmation to our user that if everything is mergeable, or if not, then why it's not mergeable. And also we would like to provide the merge option. Like I think there's a lot of discussion around like squash commit and also modify its commit message in that situation. So I think it's handy if they don't think about those merge options when they're merging. But I think for that case, if they use merge options quite a lot, then I think it should be problematic if we allow them to just /merge and switch
I think,
to the goal.
Annabelle, you're saying that is already an option today. You're saying there's this alternate path that you're concerned hasn't been considered as part of this user journey. Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah, I should check on that. It did exist. I'm assuming it still exists, but if it does,
yeah, it exists.
Okay, yeah, and I was wondering if,
I didn't aware of that. Thank you. And I didn't consider that quick action, to be honest. Always new things.
gotcha, yeah, I can definitely add that to
Yeah.
the issue. Things to think about. Oh, so exciting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Pedro, are you going to vocalize your comments?
Yeah, great points, Annabelle and Tori. About Tori's question on reverting the merge request, it's interesting because we make reverting very easy, but it's not like closing and reopening a merge request. For example, when you close a merge request, we don't ask for confirmation because you can just click again and it will reopen, and that's okay. But when reverting, the original merge request is merged. So all of the original merge request information discussion is lost in the new merge request. It's like a completely new merge request that just reverts the changes. So it inverses what you're adding and removing. And it would make for a very weird review if you clicked the merge button accidentally, because now you have to revert and you have to create a merge request to add those changes again so you can continue the review. And the version history, so all of the commits, they are changed forever, and unless you clean up the commit history. So for some organizations, having a very clean commit history is important. So that will make things difficult for them. And I don't know if that adds some useful context to
yeah, it does. I know like reverting is part of Git, like, so even if we were to change the UX on our side, it may actually be confusing, because if you do a Git revert, it does make the commits the opposite of what you just did. So we're copying that kind of experience. I wonder if there's the opportunity to do something like we do with to-dos, where maybe it's not necessarily a revert right away, or the merge doesn't go in, there's a delay of some sort, so you can immediately undo it if you make the mistake, something along those lines to look into. So it's not technically a revert at that stage, but I don't know, something to think about.
Yeah, there's a very interesting approach that I saw in a tool called Reviewable, where you have to click and press the merge button for certain seconds, and it has like a progress bar, and only when it's filled it merges. So if you release it ahead of time, it doesn't merge. It's not very accessible, and it's a weird interaction, but it's another approach. One interesting thing is that while we're still exploring this and we haven't made any decision to proceed with this confirmation step, for what it's worth, other tools like GitHub, Azure DevOps, and Bitbuckets, they also have a confirmation step before merging. And those are our main competitors. So we will look into that more closely. And one other point of context I wanted to add is that not only the accident point that we were discussing, but also we want to make sure that users are aware of the consequences of merging, and also all of the merge options that they can select. And currently that experience is all jam-packed into a very small area where you set the deletion of the source branch and the commit messages and all of that. And we've repeatedly heard that people miss those options, and that they're not discoverable. And in the middle of everything in the page, it really doesn't bring them up, basically. And also one thing that we were discussing today and this week is making users aware of best practices. So for example, there's the option of not forcing people to fix security vulnerabilities or fix a failing pipeline. There's an option in the project settings where you can say, I want to allow merge requests with failing pipelines to be merged. But we want to encourage users, or at least let them know that, hey, you're merging this, but beware that there are security vulnerabilities or that your pipeline is failing. You can still merge, but hey, we encourage you to look into those things so that you're not making a wrong decision, basically. So yeah, it's a lot of things coming together, and yeah, we're exploring this modal approach first, but we'll see.
I think
Thank
I'm
you, sorry.
No, sorry. I think I have the last one. I'm still having heart palpitations over the idea of making our users hold down the merge button. Oh my goodness. Got my blood flowing there, Pedro. Okay, so this is super tactical. I'm just thinking about patterns. And I know you've got a lot of different options you're exploring here. And obviously y'all have given this a ton of really deep thought. So thank you for that. I think we've done user research on the split button dropdown, and Jarek did a UX showcase on that. So that's something I'd want to really be aware of the results of that. And then I see this is not just specific to this, but in general, we are starting to use a lot more modals, and we have some pretty specific guidance in Pajamas around when modals are appropriate. So this is not to say you can or cannot use a modal, but just to say, hey, don't forget, modals really are meant to be reserved for pretty specific things like destructive actions. And maybe this falls into that, but because I'm seeing so many modals lately, I'm just wanting to make sure we're all aware that, yeah, modals are like, we really have to think about how we use modals.
Yep, that's a really good point. And actually on my previous design, I was using the built drop-down buttons. It's the first time. And after watching the showcase, and then, okay, maybe I need to rethink about this approach, and maybe, yeah. So I slightly changed the design after watching the showcase, and also agree with the idea of adding more guidance on the modal usage, because I was considered at first time, like probably it's better to use the right drawer, because I know that we have that pattern in the different section, but probably it's better to use modal. So I just decided to go for modal, but if we have more guidance, I think it should be really helpful for the product designer, which component to choose when.
Yeah, I think my gut reaction on this is, because I went back and reread the modals documentation the other day, just because, again, I'm seeing so many modals lately. And we got some really specific guidance in there, but I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to actually pull the UX Foundations team in. You know, they're not geared to help solve your use cases, but they are geared to help you say, like, am I thinking about how I am using patterns in my use case in the right way consistently throughout the product. So Tori, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but to me, this feels like a perfect opportunity for Sanjung to say, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Does this make sense? Do we have other options?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. That's kind of what prompted some of my questions in the first point as well. So on the same page for sure.
Cool. Thank you. I think Pedro.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time for my question.
Well, I mean, we've definitely gone way over time in this showcase because we had 4 presentations, but yeah, we have a few minutes. You can ask a question.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know if you could go back, what would you have done differently in this process?
Well, I think probably I can use a moderated test earlier so that we can also validate this idea in the earlier phase. Of course, I did some casual coffee chat look like interview with the GitLab developers, but that was like synchronous meeting and it took some time. And I was really surprised like how we could easily get the result from the user testing come. So if I go back, I might use a moderated test earlier so that I could validate some of my hypotheses more quickly so that I can deeper dive into another problem that I noticed from that test.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that for me, that was also something that you mentioned in the beginning. And I think if we had done that a little bit more, that could have sped up the process. So thanks for sharing.